Hi guys, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be reading some Reddit scary stories because I went on like a Reddit, I re-downloaded Reddit and I went into a little loophole and I'm like, this is something that I just want to share with you guys. I have my trusty dusty laptop ready. So, let's begin. Okay, this is the True Scary Stories Reddit thread. I'll put it in the description so you can do your own browsing. But this story is called Something Was Standing in the Middle of the Highway at 2 a.m. This happened about 8 months ago and I still think about it every time I drive late at night. I'm scared to drive. I was coming back from a friend's place in another city and it was already past 2 a.m. So the highway was basically empty except for the occasional truck. I actually like driving at that hour because it's quiet and there's no traffic stress, so I had music playing low and was cruising along, not really thinking about anything. I remember I was on a long straight stretch road with no street lights, just my headlights and darkness on both sides when I noticed something far ahead in my lane. At first I thought it was a road sign or maybe a cardboard box that fell off a truck because it wasn't moving at all, but as I got closer, my headlights started to light up more clearly. And I realized it wasn't an object. It was shaped like a person standing in the middle of the highway. I immediately slowed down because obviously that didn't make sense. There was no nearby cars, no broken down vehicles, nothing that would explain why someone would just be standing there at that time of night. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt, like my brain was trying to warn me before I truly understood what I was seeing. The figure looked tall and thin. It wasn't trying to weigh me down or move out of the way. It was just standing there facing my direction, completely still. I remember thinking maybe it was someone drunk or injured, so I slowed almost to a stop about 20-30 feet away. My headlights were fully on it now, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't reacting to the light, it just stood there. I leaned forward a little over my steering wheel trying to see its face, and I swear I couldn't make out any features. Not like it was dark, I mean, it literally looked completely blank. Like the light wasn't reflecting off a face at all. Right when I was trying to figure out what I was looking at, suddenly it took one slow step toward my car. Not a stumble, not a normal walk, just one deliberate step. That was enough for me. I didn't wait to see anything else. I hit the gas and swerved around it, and as I passed, I glanced to the side for a second. There was nothing there. No person behind my window, no shadow behind me, nothing in the mirror when I checked. It was just an empty road again, like it had never been there. I actually pulled over about a minute later because my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold the steering wheel steady. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to come up with a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. If it was a person, where did they go in those 2 seconds? There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, just flat roadside and open ground. I eventually convinced myself I was tired and imagined it, but the thing is, I wasn't sleepy at all before that moment. And what still bothers me is the most isn't that something was standing there, it's that whatever it was waited until I got close to move. That would freak me the fuck out. Oh my god, but God, at least it only took one. It didn't do anything, it just stood there. But it's what would have happened if it was if they got out of their car? What would have happened if they didn't press on the fucking gas and go? What would have happened? What would it have done? That's what scares me. It's what if? What if? Next story. Okay, this one really got me. I remember reading it, it's just it really got my interest. It's called The Tokyo Pink Room Lady. Context: this is a real story of probably the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I was serving a Mormon mission at the time in Tokyo, Japan. If it weren't for the fact that I experienced it with another person, I'd probably think I hallucinated the whole thing. I'm not a super big believer in the paranormal, and I don't think that's what happened here either, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around this one. Story time. This takes place about 10 years ago while I was doing some missionary work in Tokyo, Japan. I was a Mormon at the time, and as a custom in the Mormon church, when I turned 18, I submitted my mission papers and was called to Tokyo. Mormon missions are 2-year ordeals, where you are assigned to a random location in the world, told to learn the language they speak in that area, and tell everyone you meet about Jesus. While I no longer hold the Mormon faith, I will always be grateful for the adventure that was my 2 years in Japan. While you are on a mission for the church, you follow a strict regimen and are assigned to a companion that is to be your peer during the course of your time in the field. While in the field, you are assigned to different areas as the mission president sees fit. At the time of this story, I was assigned to the Kichijoji. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Area near central Tokyo. It was early fall and the leaves had just begun to change color. My companion and I hit the streets harder than ever since I had transferred into Kichijoji. It is a beautiful district in Tokyo and I believe has won multiple awards for the most desired place to live in Japan. Honestly, I'm noting that because I really want to go to Japan. So, anyway. It's mazes of alleyways and hole-in-the-wall ramen shops mixed with sprawling parks and trails give it a naturally wondrous atmosphere. It was a small area within our mission, but densely packed. You could get lost in that place. And that was the situation we found ourselves in the day we met her. I was on splits with another companion that day. Basically, splits is when you swap partners for a day with another pair of missionaries. My partner that day was an enemy of mine in the early days of my mission, but we had resolved our differences and become almost friends when we set out for our splits. Looking forward to change of pace and that splits could provide, we decided to do something a little different. That day, we decided we would try to find an inactive member of the Kichijoji congregation, someone who had been coming to church steadily for a while but then fell away for one reason or another. All we had on the person we were trying to find was a name and an address. The address was located in a town a few stops down from us on a weird, smaller train line that we almost never used. Once we arrived at our stop, immediately the vibes in that region were off. The normally busy and bright atmosphere had fallen away and given rise to empty streets and rundown buildings. Nevertheless, we pushed on. As you may expect of two foreigners wandering through a dense city, we almost immediately became lost. A few strange occurrences happened to us as we tried to write our bearings that I won't go into too much detail about, but I will list off just to give a vibe of what this area was like. First, we talked to a lady from Turkey that owned a small cafe that claimed her brother had run off back to Turkey to settle a blood feud and never returned. She also believed that a giant celestial peacock rules the world and will one day kill all unbelievers. LOL. Second, we were startled when a man in full surgery gear ran out screaming into the street covered in blood from what I believe was some sort of veterinary office. Upon seeing us, though, he stopped, immediately composed himself, and turned back around into the building. Finally, we stopped a somewhat normal dude who offered to show us the way to the building we were looking for. I say somewhat normal because I swear the dude was Batman. When we finally arrived at the place and turned to thank him for showing us the way there, that completely vanished. Full Batman style type of vanished. I don't know, he probably just walked around a corner super fast or something, but he was so quiet and quick, it was weird. So with the aid of Batman, we finally arrive at our destination, which is 5 concrete apartment buildings covered in ivy and moss with a rusted chain link fence around it. The place looks straight out of The Walking Dead. My partner and I were somewhat surprised by the state of the place, even though for the general disrepair of the area. As soon as we walked into the first hallway though, we realized we had probably come all this way for nothing. The lights in the hallways of the building were out, so the only light coming through was from the moss-covered glass that lined one side of the hallway on each floor. Each door in the hallway of the building has a small window to the left of it, and our hearts began to sink as we walked past the first few. Through the windows, we could see that the floorboards and the walls and almost every room had been ripped out. A thick patch of black mold clung to everything within the building's interior, and at this point we realized the place is probably condemned. We head back down the stairs at the end of the other building, and as we were descending, we start to hear faint sounds of classical music. We both look at each other. Neither of us had any idea what the source was. We descended further, and as we reach the bottom, we find the source of the music. The window of the last room at the end of our side of the hallway is open, and a light is on inside. We approach to reiterate we hadn't seen a single soul in this entire building up until that point, but we were about to meet the building's only resident. Nothing could have prepared us for what we saw next. As we look through the window, we get a solid view of the kitchen, and everything is pink. I'm talking hot pink, Barbie pink, neon flamingo pink. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, the cabinets, the countertops, all pink. There's a small radio playing in the windowsill. There is one thing that stands out from all this pink, however. A gray metal pole with some tape wrapped on it in various places stands from ceiling to floor in the middle of the room. A small pink stool beside it. The room is spotless. Not a speck of dirt or mold anywhere. Despite the next room down from this one being destroyed like all the rest, at the far end of the kitchen are some sliding paper doors that give a peek into the room. In the tatami room, a Japanese-style bedroom, all we can see is some large stuffed animals piled up. My companion and I look at each other and briefly discuss what a truly strange room this is. Then we call out a "hello" in Japanese through the window. A few moments go by and an answer returns in what sounds like a child's voice. But the words are completely indescribable and mumbled coming from the other room. We call out again saying, "We are looking for someone who we think used to live here. Do you know if there's another building everyone has moved into?" What we saw next is a bit hard to fully describe. And I want to be respectful as I believe that the person we met was incredibly disabled. Nonetheless, they were very unnerving to me. Crawling out from behind the paper doors is a sort of crab walk fashion. We see an elderly lady with incredibly thin arms and legs, a spherical body, dressed in an oversized t-shirt and nightgown of some sort. Her eyes are slightly bulging from her face and pointed off in different directions. There was something almost spider-like in the way that she moved, and me and my companion are completely flabbergasted. She's speaking the whole time as she approaches the pole in the middle of the room, though we're only understanding about every other word as she had a very mumbled way of speaking. Her speech style was a type of a child might use, giving a further unsettling tone to the encounter itself. Once she reaches the pole in the middle of the room, she props herself up onto the stool, then begins to climb her way up the pole. I have no idea why or how she did this. Her arms and legs look so thin, almost just like skin over bone. Yet somehow she lifts herself several feet up the pole and wraps herself around it. We were so shocked that I don't think we even said anything for like half a minute. We just stood there and might have let out a few nervous chuckles. Once we regained our composure, we asked our question again, if she knew if everyone got moved to another building. She spoke, but was difficult to understand even with over a year of experience speaking to random people every day in Japanese. This is basically what me and my companion were able to put together as we spoke with her. Everyone gone. Everyone's sick. Something about mold. She's the only one left. We wrapped up our conversation pretty quick after that. I'm a bit embarrassed to say we were both pretty off-put by the sight of a tiny elderly Japanese lady wrapped around a pole in a hot pink room. We left the building at a pace just shy of a jog. She was still speaking in a tangent when we left. We discussed it with our normal companions that night. They didn't believe us, and I don't blame them. I don't think I would have believed me either. My companion was persistent, however, about wanting to see the pink room, so we planned to walk by the building just to walk by and see the room the day after the next. The next part is the only part of the story that I'm not really sure how to explain. I take my normal companion with me to the place and retrace my steps through the neighborhood. We pass the cafe, the vet's office, and finally arrive at the apartments. I know for a fact it was only them because they were very different compared to the rest of the area. Same moss and vines, same rusted chain link fence, same building with no working lights, same mold and ripped out interiors, same kitchen windows to the left of the doors. I taken to the exact spot of the pink room was 2 days prior, and it is ripped out and covered in mold like everything else. It doesn't look like a demolition crew came in. It looks like everything was ripped up and rotting over, just like every other room, and every trace of pink is gone. Now I'm panicking. I take him up and down every floor in every building in that complex, and nothing. It was as though the pink room never existed. I tell my splits companion about this, and when I get back, he is super freaked out. He goes looking and doesn't find it either. I text him every couple of years to make sure I'm not going crazy and all that really did happen. He always says how weird the whole experience was. Neither of us are really sure what happened to that room, but we both know that it happened. Years later, looking back on it, I believe the pink room lady was probably an elderly disabled woman that had some relative in the area to clean up and look after her. I feel somewhat ashamed of the fear I felt towards her, as I'm sure she probably was also startled to see 2 foreigners stand in her kitchen window. The logical part of me knows that there must be an answer as to why the room wasn't there when we went back. I just haven't found that answer yet. This is by far the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life as of yet though, and I reckon I'll be thinking about the pink room for the rest of my life. That is weird as fuck. Because how would you go back a few days later and it's like the room completely never existed, there's mold in there. Mold doesn't grow like that quick to, you know what I mean? Like it was full, the room was fully clean and there was someone living there. And then what, 2 days later, it's like deteriorated and like there's mold everywhere, even though there wasn't before. That is weird as fuck. And what really interested me about this was the top where he's like, I was serving a Mormon mission in Tokyo, Japan. That immediately was like, I must read. I must. But that is all. I'm only gonna read that for this video. Just thinking about that pink room lady because that might be me. That might be me. I'm like, hello? If I'm ever put in a nursing home or whatever, or like, you know, like those like elderly apartment complexes, best believe everything will be pink. I don't care. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Like and subscribe. or don't. Have a beautiful day. Bye.